What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. We are fresh-faced and ready to go for Season 3, Episode 1, The Search Part 1. Hey, you know what, folks? If you are just joining us, like dipping in now that we're into Season 3, now that we're into the Dominion stuff, my name is Keith Varney. That's Mike Indeglio. I'm an old-school Star Trek nerd, and Mike is just joining us on Deep Space Nine for the very first time, so he doesn't even know what's going to happen. It's very exciting. Here we are in Season 3. Mike, how you doing?
Keith, just like the producers of the show, they said, you know what, we need to amp up the action. And so here we are in our respective places. Before we tried to give the illusion that we were in the same place, but now, Keith, through the magic of technology, we have our own LCAR system. We're beamed in. We're ready to go.
Tablets.
Yeah,
great.
We've got a battleship just off screen. We've got our own warship because
always
we need more shoots.
Yeah, more pew-pews.
So here we are. We'd like to thank you for joining us. If the algorithm has just served us to your faces and to your ear holes, we appreciate you being here. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, for sure. I am so excited to talk about this episode. I already know we're going to fight about it, so that's going to be exciting. But before we do, we have some important people to thank, and that is the people supporting our show on patreon.com/K&M. And you can join these amazing people who are supporting the show and getting all sorts of bonus chaotic nonsense. As always, Mike, who's doing it?
Oh, we've got our top tier Brian Kaufman, Casey Clark, Bren Joshua joining us. So thank you for being a patron. Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, and the mysterious Worf. Did you know he's got boot shivs and he's paying to see our bonus content? CRM Productions.
Sure is.
Charles Babaj, Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky at Grim_Toys, and Delusions at Noon. There's lots of space on that space tile. You can get your name in it by joining the team at patreon.com/K&M. And did you know, Keith, this season, Mike watches Deep Space Nine, which is my real-time viewing of each episode before Keith and I discuss, has gotten 100% more beautiful as I'm being joined by the CEO of the K&M Empire, Jen Babiak Indeglio.
Yes, this is so much fun. And as part of your bonus content, you can watch the episode. You can watch the episode with them, which is, now that Jen's there, I'm 1,000,000% more likely to watch it myself. It's delightful.
I pay a lot more attention, turns out.
Fun. Yeah, for sure. Well, you have to explain what the heck is going on. You're now me.
Well,
you're now me in the equation. It's really fun.
And quite an equation it is.
Indeed. So we're doing another new thing this season. I don't even know if Mike knows about it. But we want, at the end of every episode, we give the show a rating. 1 to 100 self-sealing stem bolts. But what we want to do is we want to include your ratings as well. So in the YouTube comments below, after this episode, tell us what your rating on 1 to 100 self-sealing stem bolts, Season 3, Episode 1, The Search Part 1 is, and we will announce it at the top of next episode and keep going on and on. So we're going to have Keith's rating, Mike's rating, and the listeners, viewers' combined rating.
We've got CEO Jen too. Don't forget.
Well, that's true. Jen, we have 4 ratings, so
it's quite an average taking place.
If you feel like, I love this show, I just wish there was more math.
Yeah.
Well,
if Keith's spreadsheet could only grow horizontally.
My spreadsheets are pretty ridiculous at this point.
Make sure you save them, folks. Don't save them under last week's title.
Don't save them. Oh my God, I had to note this episode again today, but it's good. Now it's super, super fresh because I have now noted it for a second time. So let's talk about this episode. This is Season 3, Episode 1, The Search, Part 1. Here we go. Deep Space Nine is the only Star Trek property on the air at the moment. Here in the fall of 1994. The Search Part 1. Yes, Mike?
Keith, did I read properly? Did I read correctly in my abbreviated readings, as to not be spoiled, that now that TNG is off the air and Voyager's but a zygote of a television show, that Deep Space Nine has been given the full-throated endorsement of using all of the lore from the other shows and everything. Like, we Whereas I believe Voyager was limited in what they were allowed to talk about, right? Just the Delta Quadrant. We were allowed to explore all species and ideas through all the quadrants. This is what I think I read.
Well, all of the shows are always were. We always were. What Voyager, the limitation for Voyager is once they're out in the other quadrant, they don't know what's happening here.
But
so
I read in the companion, you could pull it up, maybe check my math, but that was a design decision. They decided that was just like, because they didn't have the demo that Deep Space Nine had, they didn't allow them to break any new lore. Only the main show could do that.
Oh yes, to do
establish,
to establish new big canon stuff. Yeah, for sure. Because next gen was the one establishing the fate of the Federation, where now very much Deep Space Nine is establishing the fate of the Federation. Here on September 26th, 1994, I'm excited to hear Mike sing this song. It's too bad Jen's not here, because the song is from your hometown of Philadelphia, Boys to Men's I'll Make Love to You. Mike, take it away.
I'll make love to you like Quark wants me to, and I'll make you pay every second of the day. It is pricey, but a special price for you. Even though it better be cheap, because I spent a lot of money on the car today, and then the cat cost a lot of money, so I don't have a lot of money to make love to you you want me to.
So all right, so I'm just don't want to break this down, right? I'll make love to you. I'll make you pay. Okay, so there's one. Is that a threat? Is making love to you a punishment, or are you a prostitute in your version of the song?
Keith, you know what? Don't try to analyze my lyrics. They're very deep. They're layered. All right. Bop. No wait, not bop. I'm thinking A B C B B D. That's a deeper. That's from the other Boys to Men song.
Okay.
Boys to Men, A B C B B D.
Beep beep. All right. Well, beep beep, Mikey.
It's
gonna be great. Well, luckily, it's gonna be our top song for a little bit. Okay. So you're gonna get a draft 2 of punishing people with your lovemaking. The top movie, no punishment at all. A guilty classic, Time Cop, in its second week of domination. Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yep.
Time Cop classic. Watched it on VHS, rented it. Big time. But if we weren't being punished by your lovemaking or watching Time Cop, what were we watching on television here in the fall of 94?
Fall of 94, September 25. That's a Sunday, Keith.
26. So actually...
It went on Mondays now?
Yes, according to IMDb, and again, it was a syndicated show, which means it aired whenever the local network wanted it to. But for some reason, the official date on IMDb has switched from Sundays to Mondays.
Oh, this is great, because they actually track many more shows that take place. The weekends have been tough for me, so this is great news. Okay, well, Keith, so we talked about this not long ago. Monday Night Football is our biggest competitor. The Buffalo Bills defeated the Denver Broncos 27-20. We also had a great show on ABC, airing a new episode, a show I loved. You might remember, called Coach with Craig T. Nelson.
Ah, yes.
Had to love it. We also had The Nanny, was airing in its first initial run. There was CBS also had a show following The Nanny called Dave's World, which I don't recall. Do you remember
Dave's World? Sure. That was Harry Anderson, wasn't it?
Was it?
Hold
Look it
on.
up. It was followed by Murphy Brown.
Another classic.
And followed by Love and War, which I don't recall. Followed by Northern Exposure. So CBS was firing on all cylinders. Northern Exposure was a banger.
Yeah.
Fox was combating that with Melrose Place, followed by Party of Five.
It was Harry Anderson.
Nice.
Ha.
So a lot of great TV coming on. So that's what was happening. And of course, following all of that, you had your pick. You could go The Late Show with David Letterman, or you could go with The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. So those were your picks at the time. On September 26, 1994.
Yeah, okay. Well, lots of good options, but if you really wanted to do some heavier reading to keep up with the what's happening in the world around you, you could check out our, of course, classic weekly world news headlines. And this week, guess what? They found a 400-year-old UFO in the Grand Canyon.
Did I pull that in? Oh, come on, Mike. Did I not pull that in? Oh, because I didn't know where to put it exactly.
Oh, that's true. I didn't. No. That's true. I built out the whole new thing. We'll put it in next week. The picture's there, but I didn't tell you where to put it. So
well, for this week, apologize for
it's our pilot. Yeah, it's fine. We've done a new graphic. So there it is. It's amazing proof of an alien colony in America 3,500 years before Columbus. Wow. Well, there it is. We was wondering how the pyramids got built, but this was in America. So
nice.
It's like the Mormon pyramids. All right. So now that we've done that, let's talk about the episode, shall we, Mike?
Yeah.
All right. I think there's a graphic for that.
Yeah.
There it is. The Defiant zooms in. Very exciting. Okay. So once again, Season 3, Episode 1, The Search, Part 1. It is directed by Kim Friedman, who just directed the Jem'hadar, the season finale of our last episode. And it is written by, welcome to the show, a tremendously exciting new person to come right on the show, and that is Ronald D. Moore. Mike, do you know who Ronald D. Moore is?
I think he's just one more than I think he's brothers with Ronald B. Liss, right?
Okay, well, thanks for that. That was terrible. That was terrible. No, Ronald D. Moore is a fantastic writer who wrote on a mess of Star Trek. He wrote 56 episodes of The Next Generation. He will write 30 episodes of Deep Space Nine, 2 of Voyager. He wrote on Star Trek Generations and Star Trek First Contact, which is the best of the Star Trek movies, and would go on to create a little show called Battlestar Galactica.
Ooh.
The phenomenal reboot series. If you haven't seen it, anybody watching this has seen it. It's fantastic. Also, he created Outlander, which is still running. So ask your mom about that show. It's really quite something. So he wrote, this is his first Deep Space Nine episode, and it has a story by new showrunner Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf. Which means, Mike, I think it might be time for a little trivia.
Tell me I put it in. Yeah, I did.
Woo! Now Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia.
Ba-bam. Keith, you can tell I'm distracted as I'm the cat.
Yes, well, Mike is being a good cat dad. Cece is. Is
this the right graphic, by the way?
It is.
Okay, cool.
Oh, except I spelled it wrong.
Wait, that's even better. That's better. That's great.
It's now canon. Trivia is spelled with only one I.
Yeah, it's not important. It's trivial. It's not important, right?
I think this really encapsulates me. The amount of effort I took into building that graphic, that warp trail is from a Star Trek Discovery poster, which I stretched and adapted to give it a little bit more motion. It's layered on multiple different ways in Photoshop. It's got another effect going on to brighten it up. I pulled the baseball, had to cut it out and do a drop shadow and do all of that work, and then I don't spell trivia right.
Well, win some, lose some.
This is me in a graphic. Tremendous amounts of effort, not a lot of attention to detail. A ton of attention to detail, but not all of it. So
I've tuned out already. Let's move forward.
Keep an eye out. All right, so here we are in our trivial trivia. There's a bunch of changes here for season 3, starting with some uniform changes. So let's talk about those. Odo get some changes to his uniform that he had requested after we met Mirror Odo and had a much cooler uniform. The biggest change that you will notice is he now has a collar, which is something that always happens on Star Trek. For some reason, they always start like, no collars, no collars. And then as the show goes on, the actors are like, give me a collar. And then by the end of the series, everybody has a collar. Pro tip, just give everybody a collar to start with. That way you don't have to keep adapting it. The other big visual change that you're going to see in the uniforms are, guess what, Mike? The communicators are different.
Oh.
We have gone from the original Next Generation style communicators to the updated communicators that have like the bar that opens. I should have brought some. Anyway, you can see it in some of our graphics. But the communicators first shown on Star Trek Generations, which has aired. Or has it aired yet? No, it hasn't aired yet. But they were certainly have filmed it at this point. So new communicator pins, new update for Odo. We also have a new DP. So Jonathan West joins as the director of photography for this episode and will stay on for the rest of the series.
Okay, welcome, buddy.
We've had a lot of good things to say about the photography in the first 2 seasons. Hopefully, he will continue that fine work. We also have a new set. We have a big, giant new set of the wardroom, i.e., their office or their meeting table and meeting space in there, which looks phenomenal. Super excited to have that. I feel it's one of the iconic pieces of the Star Trek set, and it's weird to not have, or the DS9 set. It's weird to not have it yet.
Right.
But they clearly put a lot of money into it. Looks fantastic. The table looks great. It's the equivalent of the observation lounge on the Enterprise D. And lastly, the character of Michael Eddington joins this episode as the new Federation security officer. And he was originally added merely to cover up for Colin Meaney about to go film a movie for a couple of weeks. But you know what? He sticks around. Sticks around for a while. So that's... What
about new cloaking lady, Rami?
Yes. The new Romulan lady, Tyrell, who I will introduce in our guest stars.
Okay.
So first off...
she's not sticking around?
Well, she may or she may not. I'm not going to tell you.
She's not a main caster, is what you're saying. You said guest star.
Yes, as is Michael Eddington. They're both guest stars. So Martha Hackett plays Tyrell, who is the Romulan lady, who you might also know as Seska on Voyager, a much larger character, as well as a whole mess of other characters that she played throughout Trek. Michael Eddington, as I mentioned, is played by Kenneth Marshall. We also have Jonathan Fleck as Ornithar, the ridiculous guy, who you might know as Silic on Enterprise, and lastly, Salome Jens as the female changeling at the very, very end. All of these people are veterans to Star Trek already and would go on to do other things in Star Trek. So bringing in some heavy hitters for this episode. Mike, are you ready to go into the screening room?
Keith, I thought you'd never ask.
Yeah, it's time. All right, shall we open the curtain and reveal the teaser of Season 3? Here we are at a staff meeting. It's 3 months later, which gave Odo a chance to grow himself a collar and everybody to swap out their comm badges, and Dex to give herself a big Elvis-y updo pompadour.
It is quite pompy.
There's a lot going on there. And Kira is running the meeting, and the meeting basically is, guys, we are trucked. Yeah. We're right here by the mouth of the wormhole. The Dominion is going to attack through here at some point if they attack, and if they do, we are toast. They estimate they can survive about 2 hours before they are overrun. And they realize they have two choices at this point. They can abandon the station and retreat to Bajor, or collapse the wormhole. So that's sort of bad options here. But you can see right there, that's the new communicator pin. Which I like that one. I think of all of the communicators, that's probably my favorite design.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit sleeker, a little bit more modern. I don't like the contemporary ones, the Picard era ones. I for whatever reason that are not as exciting to me as these ones. So basically, we're restacking the situation. Everything is bad, but then somehow something shows up right outside the door. It's a cloaked ship, and we discover, don't worry, it's Sisko himself flying a brand new Federation ship called the Defiant, and it has a cloaking device. So I need to tell Mike here, the Federation has never had a cloaking device.
You didn't. Stephen Iron Bear is quoted as saying, "We don't sneak around."
No, Ira Stephen Bear was like, I want to sneak around, but the Gene. Star Trek rule, Gene was like, no, we don't sneak around. So this was certainly for us Trek nerds was a very shocking moment to see a cloaking device on a Federation ship. And so we have a new ship here that the station gets to keep, which I found very exciting.
So did you read, Keith? Because I read the reasoning behind that, apparently. Initially was they were looking at the demos and the response to seasons 1 and 2, and the young men who watched the show, which was the prevailing demo, basically wanted less politics and more shooty shoots. So here we go. They're like, we got to get a ship.
I mean, that was part of it. Yeah. I mean, certainly the criticism, the stereotype criticism of Deep Space Nine is it was a parking lot in space. But this allows us to have more pew-pews, but it also allows us to travel a lot more, and I think gives them a little bit more credibility. Those little runabouts were worthless. They didn't even look cool. They didn't do anything. So I was certainly very excited to have the Defiant and all of the things, the doors that having the Defiant opens up. So Sisko explains what it is. It's a prototype that the Federation developed to fight the Borg, but it was scrapped because the ship has design flaws. It's basically too powerful for its size. Its engines are too strong. Its weapons are too strong. It'll tear itself apart if you pull it to maximum things. But it has no bells and whistles whatsoever. Just guns, guns, guns. Which, awesome.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we need at this point. And so the cloaking device, and I should explain how do they have a cloaking device? They explain, well, you know what? It's on loan from the Romulans.
I thought that was a cool little wrinkle.
Yeah. And so she's there. Terrell is there just to run the cloaking device. And I think that I should also, Mike, how much do you know about the Romulans in general?
They're not great at a party is about the most I know.
Yes. So throughout Next Gen, and we first meet them in the original series, but in Next Gen, they're an adversary. Mm-hmm. And so they are very much, they're scary, they're shadowy. They have a
lot of beef with the Vulcans, right?
They have beef with everybody. Well, they and the Vulcans evolved together and split. And the Romulans became very militaristic, very shadowy. They have some overlap with the Cardassians. They're not as brutal. They're much more, I'm going to do this Bond villains, as opposed to the full evil Cardassians. But to have the neutral zone, is between the Federation and the Romulans, and so they're all in, and so there's a sort of a Cold War thing going on there. And so, anyway, very much an adversary. To have a Romulan on a Federation ship is a big deal. And if you watch Nexon at this point, you're like, oh my God, there's a Romulan. They've made a deal with the Romulans because of the threat of the Dominion. And I think it really, if you know the canon, you realize, oh shit, this means the Federation is pretty scared about this, and as are the Romulans too, to actually have them be teaming up. So
I also think that our Romulan colleague on the what's the ship called? The Defiant.
Yes.
Is very much, if they took, Jen and I agreed, if they took the Golden Girls costumer and said space it up.
Oh, with the shoulder pads.
Yeah, she's Space Golden Girls.
Romulans are all about shoulder pads. So the Cardassians have shoulder necks, but the Romulans just the shoulder pads. Yes. So anyway, so Sisko explains who Tyrell is, who this lady is. He introduces Michael Eddington, who is the new head of Federation security on the station. So he's sort of like Primin 2, if you remember Primin from season 1.
Similar hair too.
Similar hair, similar vibe, just like generic white guy security guard, who Odo reacts to exactly the same way both times. However, again, reinforcing how seriously the Federation is taking this Dominion threat. And that, like, we need to have our own head of security here on the station. And of course, setting up a pissing match because, Odo is now no longer in charge. It's going to be Eddington. And he explains we all have a mission from the Federation to go into the Gamma Quadrant and try to find the founders of the Dominion and see if we can talk this out.
So we don't negotiate with terrorists. We only negotiate with terrorists' leaders.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, they're not, at this point, they haven't been terrorists.
You're absolutely
They've just been an adversary. But it's a big deal. So we've brought in all these people. We're going to put up the big new fancy ship, and we learn that Tyrell knows everything already, because that's another part of what we understand about the Romulans is that Romulan intelligence is fantastic. They know everything about everything already. So they have their version of the Obsidian Order. It's called the Tal Shiar. Lots of stuff. Anyway, so Odo is super pissed about Eddington immediately already. He threatens to quit again. Sisko's like, I hate this, but the Federation kind of just doesn't trust you.
Yeah. An interesting thing we've learned about Odo across. Yes, he's good at his job, although there's plenty of holes to poke into that.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, we're so used to your Captain Spocks or your Lieutenant Datas who operate from a place of...
None of those are right, but okay.
I mean, that's par for the course, right? What's his name? Did I say?
You said Captain Spock. He is a captain at some point in the movie.
Okay, so not wrong. Lieutenant Spock?
He was a lieutenant on his way to becoming lieutenant commander and commander.
Mr. Spock.
You mean Data.
Mr. Spock.
Mr. Spock, yes.
And whatever Data. My point being, don't neuter me before I start. Very logical, generally. Very logical. And here, Odo has always been very quick to fly off the handle, very emotionally centered, which is cool. It's different. I will say here it annoyed me because if we've seen anything over the past few episodes specifically, Odo's desire is to operate security unilaterally with almost no oversight or rules or any sort of, it's very like shadow NSA. And he has to know that is the antithesis of what Starfleet wants, of what the Bajoran government wants, basically anybody. And it clearly, maybe that's how they did things when when the Cardassians were in charge, but that's clearly can't operate that way. So his kickback or his hissy fit over some oversight is a little unfounded, I think.
Well, I mean, I understand why he's upset. However, he is very upset very fast. He's very touchy.
Especially
he's
even
very
after
territorial.
Kira
and he's very touchy.
And Ben are both like, yo, we're on your side. We're working on it, but I got to take orders from somebody, and so do you. So here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, and I think he is reacting unreasonably. But I think you're exactly right that Odo is tremendously emotional,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we sort of expect him not to be, but he is shown over and over again. He's stoic on the outside, but he's got a lot going on the inside.
So vis-a-vis, if you will, I am interested to find out, should we find Odo's people, should we come upon
Yeah.
Odo's people, will he prove to be an outlier with his passionate, emotional response to things? Or will that be a common trait amongst changelings?
Yes. Have you watched episode 2 yet?
No.
Okay. Well, there we go. Yeah.
So currently for me, they're still just soup people.
They're just goo people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Well, put a pin in that.
Okay.
So
I could try, but it might just like ooze in.
Put some cornstarch in that; it'll harden up.
Yeah, that might be super glue or something. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So dry it out. So we head into the Cisco quarters, and Jake and Ben basically have a really cool conversation where they both realize that sometime along the way, Deep Space Nine has become home.
Yeah, it's a cool exchange.
And that, they first showed up, they both hated it. They felt so far from home, and now all of a sudden
Jake's 27.
Jake is 27, right? Jake's like, oh my God, my kid's running around. No, he's but yeah, and Jake knows that Ben feels that way because he brought his collection. He brought his football card. He brought his Star Trek action figures there. So now it's home. And he collects African art, which is really cool.
Really cool. And I love how they just like dribble in different episodes. This one being just dribble, just like how good of an investigator, how smart Jake is. Yeah, maybe he doesn't want to be part of Starfleet. Maybe we don't really know where he's headed, but he is smart as hell. He's lick smart.
He's smart as hell. And the word I would use is observant.
Observant.
And in the path that Jake takes, it makes perfect sense. Observation is a big part of the path that he takes. Really, really cool. And I also like the use on Star Trek. The representation of diversity is sometimes really lazily done.
Mm-hmm.
And stereotypically done, and we see it a lot on Voyager with Kim and Chakotay. But here, the fact that Cisco's being black is relevant, and it's not it's a part of his character, and him collecting African art makes sense. I feel like that had to be an Avery Brooks touch.
It does feel that way. I don't know for certain, but it does.
It feels organic and not shoehorned, and
which is saying something. I know
meaningful.
You said it can be lazily, but I'm sorry to throw a blast out, but I was watching and I'm still making an attempt to like give the new Quantum Leap reboot a benefit of the doubt. I had a friend on it last night, and I gave it a watch through, and I have to say I'm going to make the assumption that their motives are in the right place there. But it seems to be like, oh, now he's leaping into this ethnicity. Now he's leaping into this ethnicity, and let's show and then they have literally lines that are like, well, us Indian people, we always come to the help of it. Like they just like insert, like culturally relevant comment here, and you're just like, it reeks of such forced representation. Not that it's not still important and vital, but when it seems pigeon or forced upon you, shoehorned, it reeks.
Or it seems inorganic in that, and I actually don't know, but in the example you gave, it seems like written maybe by somebody who's not of Indian descent.
Hard to say, and my critique might be unfounded. It just feels that way versus here, where it felt like a relevant part of what you would assume Ben would be like. Right, so it feels like there was probably some input.
It feels like a character choice, and not a let's shoehorn in a leprechaun for the Irish guy.
But also indicative that he is trying to bring some of his culture and history from Earth and from his that line of heritage to make sure Jake is acknowledging it in the present in his new. present.
And I think that's exactly it. I think Benjamin Sisko is very much aware of his culture and history, and that's a relevant part to his life. He is not, his the history of his people are relevant to him even today. It's not Star Trek as a post-racial world for him. It is still a part of it. He still feels that, and we're going to see more of that moving forward. And I think it's great.
And
that,
to
hey,
ground,
you know what? This is relevant.
And to ground our sort of insinuation that he had some part of it, let's not forget our cutting insight from the 1993 TV Guide interview we read with Avery Brooks, where he said as much, that the impact of being the first black captain or first black leader on Star Trek was not lost on him, and how he found how important it was to represent both that heritage, but also a positive African-American father-son relationship on the screen. And we're getting both of those things.
And yes, and I think that, and Kate Mulgrew did the same thing as the first female captain, where, her being a woman or him being black is relevant to the story. It is a part of it. It's not just like we're going to ignore it or do it in some hackneyed way. I don't know. It's a great touch. I think it's just really, really not. I love this scene. It shows development
jammies included.
And change.
Space jammies are great.
Space jammies included. It feels like we're growing. There's actual story and character progression happening here in this change. And there's another one coming up, which I think is really cool. So later, Kira catches up with Odo, and she has gotten the Bajorans to invite him along. He knows it's just Kira's attempt to make him feel relevant. She's a good friend. And he's not particularly welcoming to that, but she really does show up for him and finds he takes it as condescension, but she really just is trying to support him and send him along this mission, which, ends up being important. But he's not sure he's going to go. She says, the Defiant's leaving at 7. Hope you show up.
He's like, I'm going to go lock myself in this room with my glow light posters and listen to Tool, and I'll come out when I'm done.
Yes, I feel like Odo would listen to Tool.
Yeah, Odo is in his very 17-year-old moody phase.
Exactly. I'm only going to listen to
as long as you're under my roof, Odo, you're gonna obey my rules.
Oh, we need a goth Odo version. His fingernails
it's just
black.
Pearl Jam, Tool, and posters from Hot Topic.
Oh my god, hilarious. But like Tool is too heady for like lazy goth. Tool is
he's smart.
He's super smart. All right, so it's not like eyeliner goth. Okay, so in Act 2, we go to Sisko's office, and Ben extorts Quark into going along the trip. Quark, of course, does not want to go because it's a suicide mission. He's not an idiot. But Quark is the only person who's established a trade deal with the Dominion when he established it with the Karama to get Tulaberry wine in a pretty good episode in Season 2.
Which actually was important, and I like how they ever retconned it, because it doesn't feel like the Dominion's been on the slate for a long time. Because my first comment here, my first thought was, and I was about to say it to Jen, I was like, yo, you're telling me there's this huge adversary, and Quark's known about them and has dealings with them and hasn't brought it up to anybody? But then if you remember, it was real shadowy even with the Tulaberry wine stuff. Like there's so many surrogates, and we'll come to see that later.
Well, right, exactly. Yeah. So many different layers, but they 100% mentioned the Dominion in that episode.
They did, but they don't know
it.
much about it. Even the Negus is like, I don't really know.
Well, right. Well, and we find out that it's very intentional on the Dominion's part. So anyway, he doesn't want to go, but of course, Sisko brings out the staff of the Grand Nagus, who ordered him to go. He then makes Quark kiss the staff, which pisses off both Quark and Armin Shimmerman, and it does seem to delight Avery Brooks.
It's amazing. It's also we can't afford the extra guest star this week, so we're just going to have the prop.
That's right. No good. We don't see Rom. We don't see the Nagus. Yeah. We spent our money. We spent our money. So later, he's so happy. Look at that. The look on Avery Brooks' face at the end of that scene is classic. So later, you never see that face on Picard.
I never saw this chair before. Are those lips? What is this chair?
These are the new chairs in the new conference room. The new set.
It's like one of those
chairs.
like husband things meets the lip seat from Full House. Let's not spend any time. Let's go. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's just keep going. So Dax comes in to talk to Cisco in their new kick-ass wardroom set, like I said. She asks what Starfleet thinks their chances are of succeeding, and he's like, slim. He points out that he can't let the station fall because he can't let Bajor fall. His passion is back after Jennifer died, and his feelings, his feeling of obligation to Bajor has also developed. Much like the station is now home, his relationship with Bajor, as the prophet, as the emissary, that is, of Bajor, he's starting to really feel like I cannot abandon Bajor. I must protect Bajor. So he has dueling purposes here. As the Federation officer, he's trying to protect Starfleet and the Federation, but he obviously has some loyalty to Bajor, which is growing and developing, and Dax is seeing that. And we're seeing here, new DP, still kick-ass lighting.
Yeah.
So, but she points out, your passion is back for the first time after Jennifer died. And so he really, we first meet Cisco as a shell of a man. And so only now are we really starting to see him reemerge after, going through the grief process. So we head to the bridge of the Defiant. Here it is. It looks awesome. It's smaller and simpler than the Enterprise, but I think it looks amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like, even me who doesn't have the full weight of the nostalgia for TNG or for the original series or any other Star Treks, there's something when you see him sit in that chair and like everybody in their little stations and he's like engage, it did a tingle for me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, also, it's Starfleet because we've been on a Cardassian station this whole time. And so there's the nostalgia for it being a ship, but also to see it's all L-cars, it's all the Starfleet gray. It's
so I guess in like Starfleet, if you like go to Starfleet medical school, you also learn to be like a ship pilot and stuff. Because isn't he like
to be a Starfleet, it's like basic training.
Okay,
right? You have to have a basic competency.
Because you feel like when we all get on the ship to like do like our battleship, we probably get like a guy who's maybe Doc should stay back and like be a. I guess they need a doctor on it.
They definitely need a doctor. They should probably have. Well, but there are Helms people there, but they die. So
okay, yeah, that's true.
He needs to step in. So, but yeah, they have basic competency. I mean,
he has a hell of a double axe handle. I'll say that.
I mean, it's very important. But hey, if you're a doctor in the military, you still have to learn how to shoot a gun. If you're a singer, my entire job is to be an anthem singer at events under the guise of the military. You still have to go through basic training.
I always think it's pretty cool. I don't know the full story, and unfortunately, he passed away. But Jen's dad has a Purple Heart from I believe Vietnam, but he was like a chaplain.
Yeah,
it's like that. So he clearly there's some bravery.
I mean, chaplains are frequently up on the front lines. Like that's pretty cool. Super dangerous. Anyway, so Bashir and Quark are both complaining about the Spartanness of the sickbay and the quarters. And just before they leave, Odo decides to show up after all, of course. They head out for the first time. It looks so freaking cool. We have great hero shots of the Defiant heading into the wormhole. The lights turn on. It's cool. The tingles.
Do they make a toy of that? Is there a Defiant toy?
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is indeed. So, and they cloak as soon as they get into the Gamma Quadrant. And one of the deals, I don't know if it's mentioned in the show itself, but it's mentioned in the Bible, the agreement with the Romulans, which was also the agreement with Rick Berman in order to allow them to have a cloak, is that they're only allowed to use it in the Gamma Quadrant. So that was a negotiation both in canon and in real life on being able to use it. So they head off into towards the Karama system, and Bashir tells Odo he's going to have to bunk with Quark. Bashir insults Quark for no particular reason, but we just love doing that. And the quarters are only bunk beds with no windows. again establishing that the Defiant is like guns only. We don't have it. There's no holodeck on the Defiant. It's also really small. So Odo wants Quark to shut up because he's turtle-heading his bucket time.
Yep.
And he wants some privacy, which is a great scene of the two of them. So on the bridge, they detect 2 jem'hadar warships, and we have a submarine sequence where we test the cloak. They build suspense before the Romulan lady is forced to admit that the cloak isn't perfect when they're at warp. Which is a important thing for the Romulans to admit because they own the cloaking devices, and Federation has spent all this time trying to figure out how to see ships. And she's like, yeah, there's this flaw we haven't told you about, that you could have detected us when we're at warp. The Jem'hadar ships keep searching.
Jem'hadar ships, which unfortunately I know, you know what they look like? Bed bugs. They look like the underside of bed bugs, and it makes me disgusted.
Well, they're intentionally designed to look like beetles or look like insects. So yeah, no, it's not good. Mike, you should really read my second novel. It's all about little bugs that eat you.
No thanks.
You should, come on, man.
Been there, paid that.
Paid what? Oh, bed bugs?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, me too. We live in New York City. It's inevitable. Anyway, the Jem'hadar ships keep searching, and they realize that the Defiant's power signature is too strong as well. Again, little ship, overpowered. So they cut main power, and that finally works, and the Jem'hadar ships leave.
See, I want to point this out. It's important to me because it's a nit that I'm hoping I don't have to have. I get the whole, like, let's have a ship so we can have pews and do all that stuff. But let's just be honest. Space battles is not what Trek has shown to be great at. You know what I mean? There's some that are serviceable. I wouldn't say that they're the best parts of the episodes. I mean, when they happen sporadically, it can be exciting, but it's not their bread and butter. And so I was happy here that early in the episode they already established that, look, we still going to be doing our puzzle solving, our problem solving. Let's have a good sequence of events of why they can see us. Let's brainstorm some ideas and let's enact a plan in the moment. And we escape detection this time. So I'm glad to see that continue. I don't just want to see like pew 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 all the time because that's not
no. And
what I'm here for.
You won't. I mean, obviously there's probably going to be some space battles that will be better than anything they've done ever on Trek. But it's still not about that. It's about these political machinations more than anything else. But they also, it's a hunt for Red October sort of a deal, running silent, trying to hide, from. So I that's why I think the cloak is really important. And the cloak is really fun. So we arrive at the Karama planet, and Quark negotiates for the location of the founders with a Karama crazy person.
So cool.
He claims to have no information for a while, but then he eventually explains that his only contact is with the Vorta. And whatever the Vorta says, they do, because if they don't, the Vorta will send in the Jem'hadar. He eventually says, the way we contact the Vorta is through a subspace relay. And he pulls up a map. And on that map, Odo sees the Omarian Nebula on the screen and becomes obsessed immediately. Which is interesting, but I have a bigger question about this scene. Why the hell is this Karma crazy person allowed on the bridge? Why is he allowed to access the computers? This feels like a security breach. An insane security breach.
Times is hard, Keith. Desperate times, desperate measures. There is no meeting room. No time, because they just have guns there.
Because they didn't have the budget to build any other rooms on the Defiant because they spent so much money already.
Keith,
and they
now,
wanted to show off
if you were really dedicated to the season premiere of Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine, you would have taken your shaver and just shaved a giant, just one stripe.
Straight up. Mike, I'm over 40.
You don't know if it's coming back?
Anything, because I don't know if it's coming back. Exactly right. I am not taking any risks. I'm going to hold on to it with my dead hands forever. Anyway.
I got to tell quickly, real quick. I was on a cruise ship doing a thing, and I went to get a haircut, right? And it turns out, no shade, but it's hard to get a good haircut anywhere but here in the States. They don't do haircuts great in a lot of other places, or not the way we expect them. Anyway,
on a moving ship.
Yeah, this guy's doing a haircut on me, and he's like, "So what are you going to do about your thinning hair?" And I was like, "Listen, I understand that this is an upsell for your keratin treatments or whatever, blah, blah." I was like, but you don't say that to a guy over 40. You just don't say it. If you think that's going to make me buy stuff, you're out of your GD mind.
No, it's going to make me buy alcohol is what it's going to do. Because I'm not doing anything with this.
I've been taking Propecia since I was 30. I'm on top of it.
When it goes, it goes. This is good. This is an all natural creep.
Yeah, you got to catch it early. If you have sons out there, people, when you buy him his first baseball glove at 8, just throw in a thing of Propecia. Just start it early. Keep what he's got. He might lose a couple inches on the growth, but at least we'll have hair.
You have to massage the oils into the baseball glove, then do your head. You do them both at the same time. Wow. Okay. Where the heck are we?
Obsession.
So, all right. So, yeah. So we've.
I want to go to there.
Relay station. I need to go to there. So now that they have the info, Quark pieces out and stays on the planet because he's smart. Later, Kira goes to meet Cisco in his bunk. It is small and cramped. In the bump, yes. It's the same bunk as the other one because they only built one set. And Kira wants to talk about Odo. They're both worried about him. And Cisco sort of relays again that Starfleet doesn't trust him because he's not really a team player, which, you know what? There's truth to both sides, right? That they can trust Odo. Odo's great at his job. He's also not really a team player and does not operate the way Starfleet does. So they both sort of have a point. So they arrive at the relay station, which is apparently unmanned. Dax and O'Brien beam down and discover the security is suspiciously lax. How could you possibly think it might be a trap? Which, to be fair, I think they did know it was a trap. They did it anyway. Of course, they are abducted by the jem'hadar, and the jem'hadar ships are headed there. And Cisco makes a very interesting decision here.
Very interesting.
Because he reluctantly leaves them behind and heads off.
He says Dax would do the same.
Dax would do the same. No, and I'm not saying it's the wrong decision, but it is definitely a difficult war decision. It's a Cisco decision. It is it is something Cisco would do. Cisco understands the stakes of this, and when you really think about, of course he says I think they'll be interrogated. Well, he doesn't know that. He might have sent his best friend to die in that situation. So it's the stakes there are pretty high. So after they do that, Kira goes to talk to Odo, who is who's listening to Tool.
Pearl Jam.
Pearl Jam, okay. So, yeah, it wasn't in 7-8. So he is now completely obsessed with the Omarian Nebula, and he wants to leave. He needs to get out of here. I need to get to that nebula.
Yeah, and this scene is good in his performance that it's you get the vibe, even though you kind of you knew where this was headed, but that it's not just an obsession, that there's a physical pull taking place, and he very good. It feels almost like a drug addict. It feels very
right. that perhaps his agency in this is less than you might think. Yeah, for sure. Then the jem'hadar ships arrive out of nowhere, and there in Act 5, there's a giant space battle. The Defiant's crazy guns blow a jem'hadar ship out of the sky, but they are getting their ass kicked.
It looks great. It looks great.
Looks amazing. Yeah. Lots of damage. A red shirt dies. There's sparks and fire and rumbling. It's really... Mike, you know what a red shirt is, yeah?
Just like a rando person in a Starfleet uniform who is expendable?
Yes, but the reason they're called a red shirt is on the original series. 3/4 of the episodes, 4 people beam down. It's Spock, Kirk, McCoy, and one random guy wearing the red security outfit, and he gonna die.
Oh, that's bad.
And
okay.
So it's been a running joke on Star Trek forever that if you're wearing the red shirt and we don't know who you are, you're gonna die.
Okay, fair.
So we lose one. It's all part of the great tradition. Meanwhile, Kira and Odo are stumbling through the wreckage trying to get to the bridge. Then the jem'hadar board and they start the fight. They arrive.
I always loved this too because you remember in the last episode, season 2, season finale, we got close-ups of the jem'hadar and their faces, their makeup, and everything was so great. And then you see them briefly through the fog in this episode, and they're like, "Should we spend that same money on the makeup?" They're like, "No, just give them like a mask, a Halloween mask, because this is not as good." No.
Well, yeah, the hero ones we see are
the detail work's not as great, but
there's also a little change, which I'm not going to bring your attention to, but it's important to the plot later.
Is it the chin pokies?
It's not the chin horns.
Okay,
but we'll get to it. Yeah, tons of fighting, lots of explosions and fire. I mentioned last week how much I love seeing practical fire and sparks on the set. It's not safe. You would never do it again today because it could all be done digitally, but this is all practical. You see fire on that set, it's fire. You see sparks, it's sparks. Awesome. Smoke, boom, boom, boom. The ship is completely overrun. And
we just got this ship.
Kira is shot. And we fade to black. Kira then wakes up on an escape pod with Odo. And instead of flying back to the wormhole, guess what? He flew them to the Omarian Nebula.
You're welcome, Kira Nerys.
You're welcome, screenshot. It is amazing with a screenshot. These obscenely attractive people, if you get them in the wrong frame. Like, Nana Visitor is stupid attractive.
Mm-hmm.
That is the face anyway. He doesn't know what happened to the Defiant. And we don't know what happened to the Defiant at this point. But he did find a rogue planet in the middle of the nebula. And they beam down onto the planet and discover a lake of Odo goo. And guess what? People start emerging out of the goo who look just like Odo. And then a female one, the Lady of the Lake, shows up and says to Odo, "Welcome home." And that is the end of part 1 of The Search, Mike.
Ooh.
Wow, big doings.
That
After 2 seasons, we have found more shapeshifters like Odo.
Keith, that's pretty good. I'm stalling right now because I know what's coming next, and I realize.
You know what? Let's skip it. Let's just go. Let's go along home move along home because I know you've got a cat appointment.
Okay, that sounds good.
We'll do a double vocab quiz next week.
Okay, fair.
Let's move along home.
AlamarEmmys time!
All right, here we are.
Everyone stop what you're doing. Make sure you pay attention to the AlamarEmmys face on the Emmy. I want to make sure Keith gets his due.
That's right.
He spent a lot of time sticking that gold face on there. I'm sure it wasn't easy to make it gold, to make it the same hue of gold, and then to just jam it on that Emmy. So let's... and it's holding a Deep Space Nine!
Now you see it!
Oh, that's the best part. I missed it entirely. Keith, do you know what that is? Right here.
What's that?
That's the Spitfire poster. I still don't know what it is, but I hung it up. I got it framed and hung it up, yeah.
Looking good. I love it. All right. So, Mike, what do you say we discuss whether or not there may be some wormholes in the plot?
Yeah. There wasn't really any I could really come up with. I mean, I think that the one you mentioned earlier, the security on the bridge there and just letting that guy kind of go around and sniff things and like put his fingers on the stuff, that would be kind of one of the big ones. But hey, they neutered Odo a little bit in his security abilities. Maybe he would have advised them differently. So we could probably put that on Odo. And then I was going to say Odo's kind of overreaction, but I guess there's precedent for the way he reacts to kind of having his authority questioned. So no, I don't see anything big or major and glaring. Keith, I'm sure you can help me out here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the security on the Ridge of the Defiant is a big one for sure. But again, desperate times. I'm sure that they have I guess with technology like this, I would imagine that I would build in a like safe mode of the bridge. So you press one button and all the displays and all the thing, because it's all digital, it's all touchscreen, so it can be anything. So you just swap it out. You do like the kid safe version of the bridge, and you just do all of that. So I guess like it's not much of a security breach to say like there are chairs, and displays.
I mean, also the other thing I brought up. I understand why this happens because TV show, but. So if these are his best people, right, then you'd think he'd want maybe a lot of them to stay like back on Deep Space Nine, because that still is their prime. Isn't Deep Space Nine pretty important? Like we should probably have like our main crew there, and then he brings like actual trained soldiers on this like away mission with him. Or I feel like it's still weird for me that like the doctor's flying the ship.
But I actually disagree. This is not a
I guess he wants his trusted
mission.
people with him.
This is a diplomatic mission that they're attempting. And that he needs his absolute best people. It's a nearly impossible mission. They have to sneak in. It's diplomacy. It's subterfuge. It might be battles. It might be all those things. Plus, as we establish in the first scene, it doesn't matter who's on Deep Space Nine. If they attack, they're toast.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, like, what are they going to do? Like, sit there and think about how screwed they
also,
are?
Didn't they estimate they had 2 hours before they were coming? Like the fighty fights was happening, so they're just
no. They were saying that if the fighty fights happen, they will survive for 2 hours.
Okay, great. So it's okay to be left for a little while with the baby.
Because there's no point. Like, they're not going to do anything. So I think that's sort of.
And we left other security guy on Deep Space Nine.
We left Eddington there. Okay. But we took Odo.
Paddington Bear is still.
Paddington Bear is there, and Eddington is the only wormhole that I might have, because it's not a wormhole, I guess. I guess it makes sense. It's more of like a writing wormhole, and that is Eddington and the Primin introductions were just too similar. Like, I get that it would happen, but I think there was just a better way to do that wasn't literally just copy pasting a beat from you've already done on the show. Mm-hmm. Whether it's you make the character different, or you make Odo's reaction to it different, or the reasoning behind putting the character there different. I don't know what it is. But it's almost like when Ira Steven Behr took over, he didn't remember they had done that because he wasn't on the show at the time. It's almost like that. So, but it doesn't really matter. It's not like the Primin thing was a big part of the story. It just sort of happened. All right. So now let's talk about our best moment.
Yes, can't wait. We sung the praises of the Ben and Jake moment early on. I loved it. I think it's probably one of the top 2 scenes, but I also think I just love that because of how much promise exists in that 30-second scene with Odo and the Odo people and the changelings. I think that's the best part of the episode. I think it's better than the season finale cliffhanger. I just think those last 30 seconds are the best moment of the episode because of every door it opens. It opens so many doors as far as Odo and his character development, but also these changelings could be anything. They literally have opened themselves like a writing Pandora, because they could be anything. They could be, like they could be badder guys. They could be the salvation for us. We don't know, right? They could be anything. So I'm excited about it. The challenge I think it opens is like, do they always live in the goo? Do we have to keep having these bad effects? Because the only real bad effects is when they de-goo and goo.
Is the gooing, yeah.
So could we could they just like not be in the goo for a little bit? I don't know, so much. But
not goo.
But that's my favorite scene, is the goo.
Yeah. I think certainly as a cliffhanger, that's like a holy crap. That's very exciting. I think for me, it is it's the two scenes where we see the progression of Sisko's relationship with the station, with Bajor. It's a scene with Jake, and it's a scene with Dax, where um, the station is now home. I really like that as an idea, and as somebody who has, traveled far from home. Like, when did New York become home? When did the city become home? When will New Jersey become home? It's all changing. What is my relationship with my childhood home? And I think that is, it's really interesting. It's very universal. It's like very sci-fi, but it's and when does the fate of, instead of Bajor, the local politics here, whether it's a school board fight or whatever it is, like, when does that become important? And I like those transitions that we all make. So I thought I liked that, from the storytelling perspective, from the acting performance, but also, like, Deep Space Nine has more character development and more story development than any other Trek. And I think we're seeing the the fruits of the labors that we did in the first two seasons. I like that transition. And the reveal of the Defiant, seeing the Defiant. Oh man, it's so cool. Like, when they introduced it, I was so excited about having a kick-ass ship to play with. So I like that. Anyway, so I gave like 16 of them. So Mike, let us hand out some STEM bolts, shall we?
Now, Keith, should we start with me? Should we go to Jen? What do you think order-wise?
I think we should finish with Jen.
Okay.
Because she's the CEO.
You're right. That's
Jen
true.
should get the final word.
So, listen, things change for me a little bit here, because I've just been told how now the door's open and now the great episodes are beginning, right?
Right.
So my expectations have grown. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great episode. I think that they did a good job of establishing that there's a new normal, and we're taking offensive measures. We've got the new ship, which I think is cool. I think, like you said, the progression scenes are cool. We see where everybody's at. Interestingly, the season finale led me to believe that this threat was really imminent, and that even though they said don't come through it seemed like they were insinuating don't come through the wormhole and we're good. It felt like it was less of that. So the stakes felt very high, and this episode feels like they're addressing those stakes, but also it feels like they're not as high. Like, we had to kind of reestablish, because you can't start at 11 to start a season of television, because it's like, where are you going to go? Right. And so that back off felt a little, but then all of a sudden the stakes jump again, and we're killing somebody dies, and we're blowing up again. There's always the fact we just blew up the ship. So it feels a little uneven as far as I'm concerned. I also felt like the plot doesn't actually move forward a bunch. Now, I guess the cloaking stuff, all of that setup is cool. But as far as like the narrative, nothing really happens until that last 30 seconds, really. Like, that is like, oh shit, this is where we're going with this. But also, I guess there are some stakes that when we just leave those people behind, and that felt like these are two times where Ben has responded in a way that felt understandably, because like War Ben is clearly, in battle Ben is different than normal Ben, who's a little more,
for sure,
who tends to think on things a little longer. The emotional compartmentalization he's able to do in moments of high stress is still startling to me a little bit. Like it comes out of nowhere, and so that I'm still wrapping my head around it. I think it's a really beautiful episode. I think it's clear that we're in a new paradigm. I like a lot of the new stuff. The story left me a little, we see this new it was good. It was good. Not top tier. So I'm going 83 STEM bolts.
Yeah. Well, listening to you talk, like, I get it. And it's really hard to adjudicate a part one of two.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And because, like, this episode.
But also, like, let me stay. Like, when you saw the Defiant, you were like jacked up. I don't carry any of the like desire to see a ship. Like, I liked Deep Space. That's all I knew, right? So it's not like I was missing anything. And so some of the things that had a sort of a Trekkian weight, I am void of. And so so I'm a little more measured, I think.
Contact. Well, and that's
like the Romulan thing, the fact that I didn't know that it was amazing that we had a Romulan counterpart. I knew that it was different, but it didn't
You
strike
didn't know
me.
the weight of it. Yeah. No, for sure. So yes, I think that definitely affects your experience of it, as does not having seen part 2.
Yeah,
because this episode does so much table setting. It does it's table setting for part 2, obviously, but it's table setting for like the rest of the series. And so when you really think about it, there isn't a lot of story. I mean, there's a lot of, here's our new normal, here's our new setup, here are some new people, here's our new location, here's our new objective. But if you really look at it, they get a ship, they plan to go, they go out, and they get part of the way on the journey, and they get their ass kicked.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a huge story part of it. But I think, having seen part 2, it makes a lot of it makes much more sense by the end of part 2, and it makes more sense in the end, 5 seasons later. So yeah, I think by itself, there's a lot of table setting, but I think it does in exciting fashion. But yeah, if you don't have the huge association with all of it, you don't know what the Romulans mean, you don't know what the cloaking device means. I get it. And having a warship in the Federation doesn't do warships. So there's a lot there that's sort of new and different. I think for me, I really liked it. I found it very exciting, mainly because of context, more than the things by itself. So for me, I actually liked it a lot more than you did. I'm really curious to see what you're going to think about next week, and whether or not it's satisfying continuation of that story. I'm going to give it 91 self-sealing stem bolts, the same as last episode. But we have a third opinion, and before we watch it, I need to remind you, you're the fourth opinion. So tell us how many self-sealing stem bolts you're giving this episode in the comments below. But let's listen to what CEO Jen has to say about The Search Part 1.
From the desk of the CEO.
Out of 100? I mean, I've only seen a few, so it was exciting. Because we started right off from, they just left. They were like, what do we do? We got 2 hours. And then, things started happening. I feel like the battle, seeing Cisco, protecting. Odo was, fighting. Yeah, no, that last bit, the welcome home. That's Chef's kiss. Yeah. 90.
Okay.
I was really into it. I was really into it.
She loved it.
Everyone was very good.
She loved it. Jen loves Deep Space Nine. All right, there we go.
I do.
There we go.
She's right with you, buddy.
Always.
Yep.
Jen and I will always agree against you.
It's fair. Very fair. Very fair. We had a great time. If you want to watch us, you can do so by joining the team at patreon.com/KNM with all of these fine folks. You should be so blessed to be in the company of these people. You can join the team, or you can give us a like, give us a subscribe. We've got other shows if you're just joining us. We'd love to have you.
For sure. And for those listening to the podcast version of this, and I know you're out there, you can help us out by leaving a rating and review on whatever podcasting service of your choice. I'm Keith Varney. That's Mike Indeglio. All of our social media handles are below. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back next week with The Search Part 2 here on Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.